The morning light was soft and golden as it touched the quiet town of Oakville, filling the streets with a gentle warmth that made people slow down and smile as they walked to work. But inside a small cafe near the corner, things were different. Because the air was full of noise, chatter, and clinking cups as waiters hurried from table to table, trying to serve the morning crowd that seemed to grow larger by the minute. In the middle of that rush, the door suddenly opened and a woman stepped in, wearing a plain jacket, faded jeans, and shoes that looked a little worn out. She carried a small brown bag on her shoulder and moved quietly, as if she did not want anyone to notice her. The people near the door looked at her for a moment, then turned away, whispering softly among themselves. She walked slowly to a corner table and sat down with calm eyes, looking around the cafe, taking in every sound and every face. The head waiter, a tall man with a sharp tone, looked at her from behind the counter and sighed loudly. Another one of those customers, he muttered under his breath, the kind who come and order one cheap drink and stay all day. He grabbed a menu and placed it on her table without even making eye contact. "What will it be?" he asked with a tired voice. She looked up politely, her tone gentle and steady. "Just a cup of coffee, please, and maybe a slice of bread if you have some fresh." The waiter nodded, but there was no smile, only a cold look before he turned and walked away. Around her, the cafe was alive with people talking, laughing, checking their phones, and calling for more orders. One woman in a fancy red dress waved at the waiter and asked for extra cream with her latte. He rushed to her table, smiling brightly as if she were the most important person in the room, while the woman in the corner waited quietly. Her hands folded, her gaze resting softly on the sunlight slipping through the window. Minutes passed, then 10, then 15. Still no coffee. The waiter seemed to have forgotten her completely. She looked around but said nothing. She only sighed softly as the noise of the cafe grew louder. A group of men in business suits entered, laughing loudly, and the waiter ran toward them, almost tripping over himself, to pull out chairs and take their order. The woman in the corner lifted her hand politely to get his attention. "Excuse me?" she said softly. "I think you forgot my order." Her voice was calm but clear. The waiter turned his head and frowned. "You can wait, lady, we are very busy right now. Maybe help yourself if you're that desperate," he said with a smirk. The people at the next table laughed. One of them whispered, "Maybe she used to work here." The woman didn't react. She just lowered her hand and gave a small nod. Her eyes still gentle, but there was something in them that made one older man near the window look twice. Something quiet, but strong, like calm water hiding a storm under the surface. The door opened again, and a little boy about 10 years old came running inside, tears in his eyes, his small voice calling for his mother. The crowd barely noticed, everyone too busy with their breakfast, but the woman in the corner stood up right away. She knelt down and spoke softly to him. "What happened? Little one, where is your mother?" The boy sniffled, saying he lost her at the shop across the street. She smiled kindly. "Let's go find her," she said, taking his hand. They stepped outside into the morning sun, and within a few minutes, she came back with the boy's mother following close behind. The woman looked relieved and kept thanking her over and over again. The cafe customers watched from the window. Some even clapped lightly, but the waiter only rolled his eyes and whispered, "Show off," under his breath. The woman returned to her table quietly, her coffee still missing, her seat still cold. She sat down again and looked out the window, watching the mother hug her child tightly on the street. A soft smile touched her lips for a moment and then faded again. When she reached to adjust her jacket, the sleeve moved slightly and something silver caught the light. It was a small star charm hanging from her wrist, shining faintly under the sunlight. No one noticed it except the older man near the window. His eyes widened for a second. He leaned forward, squinting at the silver shape. His heart beat a little faster. He had seen something like that before years ago, maybe on a television report or a news article, but he couldn't remember. Where he watched her carefully now, curiosity growing inside him, while the rest of the cafe carried on without a care, as if she were invisible. But that tiny flash of silver had stirred something deep in his memory, something important. The woman, meanwhile, sat quietly again, her face peaceful, but her thoughts far away. The chatter around her faded into background noise as she traced her fingers along the edge of the table, perhaps remembering another time, another place. Outside the cafe cars, past people hurried by. Birds sang above, but inside the air felt thick like something was about to change. The older man kept watching the woman in the corner, the one everyone thought was just another stranger, but his mind whispered that she was someone else, someone different, someone who carried a story that no one in that cafe could ever imagine, and all it would take was one small glance at that silver star to change everything forever. The cafe grew busier as the morning turned, brighter. The sound of spoons clinking and chairs scraping filled the air like a restless rhythm that never stopped, and yet in the middle of all that noise, the woman in the corner stayed calm. Her face, gentle, her eyes quiet like a deep river that held secrets far below the surface. She still had no coffee and no one seemed to care, but the old man near the window kept glancing at her again and again, his curiosity growing stronger each time that silver glimmer from her wrist flashed in the light. The waiter passed her table without looking and went straight to the group of businessmen who were laughing loudly. One of them called him over, saying, "Bring more sugar and make it quick." The waiter nodded quickly with a smile. The woman waited, patiently, her hands resting on the table, her eyes drifting between the people around her. She noticed how easily everyone ignored one another, each face focused only on their own little world. At one corner, a young girl spilled her drink, but no one helped her. The waiter frowned and walked away. The woman stood up quietly, walked over, took a napkin, and helped the girl clean the table. The girl smiled shyly and whispered, "Thank you." But before the woman could say anything, the waiter appeared again, snapping, "What are you doing here, lady? You are making a mess. This is not your job. Please sit down before I call the manager." The girl looked scared and sat back. The woman only nodded and returned to her corner, her calm never breaking. The old man, near the window, finally spoke quietly to the waiter, leaning forward as the waiter passed by. "Do you even know who that woman is?" he asked. The waiter frowned. "What woman, the one you keep yelling at?" The old man said, pointing to the corner. The waiter shrugged. "Just some broke traveler, maybe looking for a free meal." The old man shook his head slowly. "Something about her seems different," he said. The waiter laughed. "Maybe she used to be a waitress and forgot where she worked." Everyone near the counter chuckled, and the sound of their laughter floated through the air. The woman heard every word, but she did not react. Her face showed no anger, no hurt, only silence. She reached into her bag and took out a small notebook. It was worn out and soft from years of use. She flipped it open to a page filled with numbers and small drawings. None of it made sense to anyone watching, but to her, it meant something important. She ran her finger along a name written faintly in the corner, a name that once made the world stop. Captain Mira Lawson, the same name that had been whispered on news channels years ago when the floods had taken everything. The old man rubbed his temples, trying to remember that name. He had seen it before in a newspaper article, perhaps, or a memorial plaque near the town bridge, but his memory was foggy. He looked again at the woman, trying to match her calm face with the face of the hero he had once seen on television. Could it be, he wondered? Or was his mind playing tricks on him? The door opened again, letting in a rush of cold air, and a tall woman entered, wearing a bright red coat and carrying a designer bag. Her perfume filled the room. She looked around, and her eyes landed on the woman in the corner. "Oh, you again," she said with a smirk. "Aren't you the one who helped that lost kid earlier?" How sweet she looked at the waiter and added, "Maybe she works here after all. Why don't you give her an apron?" The waiter laughed. The other customers joined in, and the laughter spread like wildfire. The woman looked at the lady in the red coat with quiet eyes, her voice soft but steady. "You shouldn't laugh at others," she said gently. "Kindness costs nothing." The lady rolled her eyes and waved her hand. "Whatever," she muttered, turning back to her table. But the old man could see a faint tremble in the woman's fingers as she picked up her notebook again. Outside, thunder rumbled. Though the sky was still clear. Dark clouds began to form on the horizon, and the wind grew stronger. Leaves spun, along the sidewalk as if warning the town of something coming. The old man stood up, walked toward her table and said softly, "Miss, you remind me of someone." She looked up, her eyes meeting his calm and kind. "You remind me of a soldier I once saw on the news. Someone brave. Someone who wore a silver star on her wrist." The woman looked at him for a long moment, then smiled a small secret smile before replying, "Maybe you're mistaken, sir. I'm just a traveler passing through." The old man nodded, but he wasn't convinced, not even a little. Just then, a crash echoed from the kitchen. Someone had dropped a tray. The waiter shouted in frustration. Everyone turned their heads for a moment, and when they looked back, the woman in the corner was gone. The chair empty, the table clean as if she had never been there at all. The old man rushed to the door, looking out into the street, but there was no one. Only the wind blowing softly and a small piece of paper fluttering on the ground. He bent down and picked it up. It was from her notebook. The page had only 3 words written in neat handwriting: "Help is coming." He stared at the words, feeling a chill run down his spine. He didn't understand what they meant, but deep inside, he knew something big was about to happen. Something that would make everyone in that cafe remember the woman they laughed at, and the silver star they ignored. The cafe felt strange after she left, as if all the laughter and noise had faded away, leaving behind only whispers and uneasy faces. The waiter tried to return to work, but his hands shook slightly. The old man still stood near the door, holding the small piece of paper. With those 3 words, "Help is coming," his mind kept repeating them again and again, as if they carried a secret he was meant to understand. Outside, the wind grew stronger, the sky now heavy with gray clouds, and the sound of thunder rolled like a warning across the town. The waiter looked out through the window and frowned. "She left, without paying," he muttered angrily, but the old man turned to him with a look that made him stop. "Maybe you should be thankful she came at all," he said quietly. The waiter snorted. "Thankful for what? For making me look like a fool," he said, shaking his head. The old man just sighed. He sat down by the window again, his thoughts drifting back to the image of the woman's calm face and that silver star that shimmered every time the light touched it. It was not jewelry, that much he knew it meant. Something important. A few moments later, a young delivery boy came rushing into the cafe, his face pale and frightened. He shouted, "There's been an accident near the old bridge. A bus slipped off the road. People are trapped." Everyone gasped. The waiter froze for a second before running toward the door, but the old man grabbed his arm. "Wait," he said. "Where did you say the accident happened?" The boy replied, "Near the bridge by the river," and before anyone could speak again, the door opened once more, and the woman walked in, her jacket wet from the rain, her hair blowing in the wind. She looked calm, but her eyes were sharp like steel. Everyone stared at her in shock. The waiter stammered, "You again?" She looked at him and said in a quiet voice, "I need help. There are people trapped near the bridge. I need rope, blankets, and water. Hurry." The waiter blinked, confused. "How do you know about that?" She said nothing, only turned to the old man and asked, "Can you drive?" He nodded without hesitation. She gave a small nod. "Good, bring your truck. We have no time." The cafe went silent as the 2 of them hurried outside. The others stood frozen, unsure of what to do. Finally, the woman in the red coat spoke. "Who does she think she is, ordering people around?" The waiter swallowed hard, his voice unsteady. "I don't know, but maybe we should follow her." Outside, rain began to pour down heavy and cold. The wind howled through the streets. The old man's truck rattled as it moved along the slippery road. The woman sat beside him, giving directions, her voice calm and sure. "Turn left here," she said, then faster. "The bridge won't hold for long." He glanced at her again. That silver star on her wrist glinted faintly, even in the dim light. When they reached the bridge, chaos met them: broken glass, the sound of crying people, a bus half sunk into the muddy river water, rising fast. The woman jumped out before the truck even stopped. She ran toward the wreck, pulling open the door of the bus, her hands steady, her movements quick and practiced. The old man shouted, "Be careful," but she didn't answer. She climbed inside the tilted bus, helping a child first, then a woman, then another man. One by one, she pulled them out. her strength surprising everyone who watched. Soon other drivers stopped to help, following her orders without question. She told them where to stand, what to hold, and how to pull. Within minutes, 6 people were safe on the shore. The rain beat down harder, and the current grew stronger, but the woman didn't stop. She went back into the bus again when the old man tried to follow. She looked at him and said, "Stay back. I know what I'm doing." He froze in place. Those words, they echoed in his memory. He had heard them before, years ago. On the news, the voice of a hero who saved dozens during the flood. Captain Mira Lawson, the missing captain of the Silver Star Corps. The realization hit him like lightning, and he shouted over the rain, "Captain Lawson, it's you, isn't it?" She looked at him for a moment and nodded once, then turned back toward the wreck, pulling another person to safety as if the name didn't matter anymore, as if she was just doing what needed to be done. By the time rescue trucks arrived, the bus was empty. Every person save the crowd that gathered whispered among themselves, pointing at her, the woman who had come from nowhere. The woman everyone had laughed at earlier, now covered in mud and rain, but still standing tall. When the paramedics thanked her, she simply said, "Make sure they are warm and safe." Then she turned away from the flashing lights, walking slowly toward the old man who still stood by his truck, shaking with emotion. "You really are her," he said softly. She smiled faintly. "Maybe once, but not anymore now. I just go where I'm needed." She looked back at the cafe in the distance, its lights glowing faintly through the rain, and added, "They treated me like a waitress, but it doesn't matter. People only see what they expect to see." Then she handed him the silver star from her wrist, pressing it gently into his hand. "Keep it safe," she said. "It doesn't belong to me anymore." He looked down at it, shining even in the dark. When he looked up again, she was already walking away, her figure fading into the storm, her footsteps quiet, but sure as thunder, rolled once more over the town of Oakville. The rain slowed down as morning light began to break through the heavy clouds, spreading a pale glow over the quiet town. The bridge was now surrounded by rescue workers, reporters, and flashing lights, but the woman was gone. She had vanished once again, leaving behind only muddy footprints and silent wonder. The old man stood by his truck, still holding the silver star in his trembling hand. The metal felt warm even in the cold air, as if it carried the weight of everything that had just happened. He looked at the engraved words on its back, Silver Star Corps, and below that, a number that he remembered seeing on television years ago. When the floods hit the nation, he felt a lump rise in his throat and whispered her name, though no one around him could hear it. Captain Mira Lawson, the woman everyone thought was gone forever, now alive and standing right here in Oakville, saving lives again while being treated like she was nothing but a waitress. At the cafe, people were talking, the air thick with gossip and guilt. The waiter paced nervously behind the counter, his hands fidgeting. The woman in the red coat sat silently staring at her half-finished coffee, which had gone cold now. Her voice came out small and uneasy. "Did she really save those people?" The waiter nodded slowly, his voice shaking. "Yeah, she did. I saw her. She went straight into the water, like she knew exactly what to do. She didn't even hesitate." The young girl who had spilled her drink earlier whispered, "I think she's a hero." The others looked down, ashamed of how they had laughed at her. One man spoke quietly. "I called her poor. I said she looked like she didn't belong here." The cafe owner, an older lady with silver hair, walked out from the kitchen, her eyes serious. She said, "Sometimes people wear simple clothes because they carry heavy stories. We never see those stories until it's too late." Outside, the old man walked back into the cafe, still soaked from the rain, his presence quiet but heavy. He placed the silver star on the counter, and everyone gathered around, staring at it as if it were a treasure. The waiter swallowed hard, his voice low. "She gave that to you?" He nodded. "She said it doesn't belong to her anymore, that she just goes where she's needed." The cafe owner picked up the star, carefully holding it like glass, her voice soft with awe. "I saw this same star once on the news. After the Black River flood, they said every member of the Silver Star Corps wore one. They said their captain disappeared after saving a whole village. No one knew what happened to her. Until now, the room fell silent, everyone staring at the little silver piece that gleamed under the cafe lights. Moments later, the sound of sirens echoed outside again. Reporters had arrived, the news had spread quickly across town. Cameras flashed and voices shouted questions, but the woman was nowhere to be found. One reporter pushed through the door and asked, "Have you seen Captain Mira Lawson, the missing hero from the flood?" The cafe owner nodded slowly. "She was here, she came in yesterday." They all stared at the reporter, who looked both shocked and thrilled at the same time. By noon, the story had spread. Across Oakville, people stopped on the streets whispering her name. Children pointed at the television screens in shop windows showing a picture of the woman soaked in rain helping people at the bridge, her calm face shining brighter than any metal. The news headline read, "Missing Hero Found in Small Town Cafe." The town suddenly realized how they had treated her, how they had mocked her and turned away when she only asked for a cup of coffee. The waiter couldn't stop thinking about her words. Kindness costs nothing. He repeated them again and again in his mind until they began to change something deep inside him. He wiped the counter with slow, careful movements. His usual cold attitude gone, the red-coated woman walked up to him quietly, her eyes red. "I was cruel to her," she said softly. "I laughed at her when she was just trying to be kind." The waiter nodded. "Yeah, me too." Later that evening, the cafe owner decided to do something. She placed the silver star inside a small glass frame and hung it on the wall above the counter right where everyone could see it underneath. She placed a handwritten note. It said, "In honor of Captain Mira Lawson, the woman who reminded us that kindness matters more than pride." When people came in the next morning, they all stopped to look at it. Some smiled, some cried, some stood in silence as the old man sat by the window with his coffee waiting, hoping that maybe she would walk in again, but she never did, not that day, not the next. But one afternoon, a little boy came into the cafe holding a folded note. He said, "A lady by the river asked me to give this to you." The old man took the note and opened it. The handwriting was neat and familiar. It said, "Do not look for me. I am safe. Help those who are near you and the world will take care of itself. Tell them thank you for the coffee." The old man smiled faintly, tears filling his eyes. He read the message aloud, and the entire cafe fell quiet, listening as if every word carried warmth into their hearts. From that day on, the cafe changed people, greeted strangers kindly. They shared tables, they offered smiles and help without being asked. And above the counter, the silver star continued to shine, catching the sunlight every morning, a reminder that true worth cannot be seen by clothes or titles, but by the courage to care when no one else will. The sun rose over Oakville, painting the streets with golden light after days of rain. The air smelled clean and fresh, and the cafe doors were open again. The silver star on the wall shone brightly, catching every ray of sunlight as if it wanted to remind everyone who passed by that something had changed. The people in town were different now. They spoke softly, smiled, more helped one another in small ways, and yet deep inside everyone still thought about her. The woman who came and disappeared like a whisper in the wind. The waiter now worked with more care. His voice gentle when taking orders, he no longer rushed or rolled his eyes at anyone. The cafe owner watched him with quiet pride. The woman in the red coat came in every morning now, not to gossip or complain, but to sit by the window and leave coins in the tip jar for the staff. She would sometimes glance at the silver star on the wall and sigh softly, wondering if she would ever get a chance to see the woman again, to say, "Sorry." Face to face, news of what happened at the bridge had spread far beyond the town. Reporters from other cities came to Oakville, looking for Captain Mira Lawson, but none could find her. Some said she had gone to another town. Others said she was helping somewhere far away. The old man who had driven her that day told them all the same thing. She doesn't want fame. She just wants peace, and everyone nodded as if they understood. But they all secretly hoped she might return just once more. One morning, the cafe owner decided to hold a small event. She called it a day of thanks. She invited the people rescued from the bridge, the townsfolk, and anyone who wanted to honor the mysterious woman. They decorated the cafe with flowers and ribbons. Children drew pictures of silver stars and taped them on the windows. A big sign hung above the door that said, "Thank you, Captain Lawson," in bright red paint. By noon, the cafe was full, the air buzzing with excitement and warmth. People shared stories of kindness, small moments when they remembered her soft voice or her calm eyes. The old man stood near the front, holding the glass frame with the silver star inside his hands, trembling slightly. He said into the microphone, "She didn't ask for anything, not even recognition. She just did what was right. And maybe that's what being a hero really means." Everyone clapped. Some had tears in their eyes. The waiter stepped forward, his voice low and filled with regret. "I was rude to her. I treated her like she was nothing," he said, his hands shaking. "I even told her to serve herself, but she still smiled at me. I will never forget that." The crowd went quiet. Listening, every word carried weight because everyone had once done the same in some small way. Judging before knowing, the woman in the red coat wiped her eyes and stood up too. I laughed at her. "I thought she didn't belong here," she said, her voice cracking. "I was wrong. She taught me something I'll never forget, that kindness has no uniform." As the people spoke, the cafe door creaked open. Everyone turned at once and gasped. Standing in the doorway was the same woman, wearing a clean white shirt, a light blue jacket, and a small smile, her hair tied back neatly. She looked tired but peaceful. The old man stepped forward, his eyes wide. "I didn't think we'd ever see you again," he said softly. She smiled. "You shouldn't have gone through all this for me," she said, looking around at the crowd. "You were the ones who learned the real lesson." The people gathered around her, some crying, some just staring. The waiter stepped up, his voice shaking. "I am sorry for how I treated you that day. I forgot what respect means." She reached out and placed her hand on his shoulder, her touch gentle. "We all forget sometimes," she said, "but what matters is that we remember again." He nodded, his eyes wet with tears. The cafe owner came forward, holding the framed star. She offered it back to her. "Please take it. It belongs to you." The woman shook her head. "No," she said. "It belongs here. It reminds people to be kind. That's where it should stay." The old man smiled, wiping his glasses, saying, "She's right. Let it shine here for everyone to see." Outside, a light breeze blew, carrying the sound of laughter and the smell of coffee through the streets. The crowd followed her outside, wanting to talk to her more, but she only smiled, waved, and said, "I must go. There are others who need help." Her words soft but sure. Everyone fell silent as she walked away down the street. Her steps calm, her figure fading slowly into the bright afternoon sun. The woman in the red coat whispered quietly to the old man, "Do you think she'll ever come back?" He looked at her and smiled gently. "Maybe not." But she left something behind, something stronger than her presence. The red-coated woman looked up at the star shining through the window and nodded. Yeah, she left hope. The day ended with music and laughter, children running around holding silver paper stars above their heads, and the people of Oakville knew that they would never again look at a stranger the same way. For now they understood that sometimes heroes wear no medals and carry no fame. They might walk into a cafe asking for a cup of coffee and leave behind a lesson that lasts forever. The morning after the celebration, the town of Oakville was calm. The streets were quiet, except for the sound of birds singing and the smell of fresh coffee drifting from the cafe. People walked slower now, smiling at one another, greeting strangers as if they were friends. The silver star still hung on the wall, shining brighter than ever, as the sunlight touched it, and every person who came inside looked at it for a moment before sitting down, remembering the woman who changed their lives with nothing but kindness and courage. The old man sat by the window sipping his coffee slowly, watching the world outside. He had not seen her since yesterday when she walked away down the street, disappearing into the golden light. But somehow he knew she was still out there somewhere, helping someone in need. He felt peace, knowing that her spirit would never really leave the town. She had already left her heart here in the smiles and the gentle way people treated one another. Now the cafe owner came over to his table and placed a fresh pastry beside his cup. Her voice soft, she said, "She made us better, didn't she?" He nodded slowly. "Yes, she did, and she did it without even asking for anything." The owner smiled as her eyes sparkled with pride and said, "That's what real heroes do. They don't ask. They just give." Outside, the morning crowd began to grow. Children ran past laughing, holding small paper stars they had made at school. Their teacher had told them the story of Captain Mira Lawson, The woman with the silver star who saved lives and reminded everyone to be kind. Some of the kids shouted proudly. We want to be like her when we grow up. The old man heard them and smiled, his heart warm with hope. Around noon, a mail carrier entered the cafe holding a small envelope. He looked around, asking for the owner. When she came forward, he said this was left at the post office with no name, just an address for this cafe. She took it carefully and opened it. Inside was a short letter written in neat handwriting, the same style the old man remembered from the note she had sent before. It said, I am safe. Thank you for keeping the star where it belongs. It shines brighter there than it ever did with me. Tell them I am proud of them all. Signed. The owner read the note aloud, and everyone in the cafe listened in silence. Some smiled. Others wiped their eyes. The red-coated woman whispered softly, She really is watching us, isn't she? The waiter nodded. Yes. And maybe that's why the cafe feels different, like she's still here somehow. The old man added, Maybe she is here in every act of kindness we choose to do from now on. That afternoon, the mayor of Oakville came to the cafe to present an award. He said it was to honor Captain Mira Lawson for her bravery and her lessons of humanity. He placed a golden plaque on the wall beneath the silver star. The words engraved in it read, To the woman who taught a town to see with their hearts. Everyone clapped and cheered, though their eyes filled with tears. Later that evening, as the sun began to set, the streets of Oakville glowed with soft orange light. The people gathered outside the cafe, lighting candles in a small ceremony of gratitude. The wind carried the soft flame of each candle like a gentle wave of light moving through the crowd. The old man stood in front, holding the silver star high for everyone to see. It shimmered in the light of the candles like it was alive and breathing. He spoke with a strong but emotional voice. We may never see her again, but we can live the way she showed us. We can care, we can forgive, and we can look beyond what we see on the outside. Everyone nodded, some crying, some smiling. Everyone feeling that warmth deep inside their hearts. At that same moment, far away in another town, a woman wearing a light jacket walked down a quiet street. Her hair tied back, her face calm. She stopped near a small bakery where people were rushing to help an injured dog by the side of the road. Without hesitation, she knelt down, helping them bandage the animal. Her movements gentle, her voice steady and comforting. When the dog was safe, she stood up, thanked them, and walked away again, disappearing into the evening light. No one knew her name, but as she turned, a faint shine from her wrist caught the last ray of sunlight. It was another silver star, simple and beautiful. Back in Oakville, the candles flickered as the wind grew soft, and the silver star above the cafe door reflected the glow. It was more than a symbol now. It was a promise, a reminder that kindness never disappears, even when the person who started it is gone. The people looked at it one last time before leaving for the night, their hearts full of peace and hope. When the cafe lights dimmed, the silver star still shone on the wall, bright and quiet, guarding the room like a gentle spirit whispering through the night. Respect doesn't need a uniform. Kindness doesn't need a title. And heroes can be found in the most ordinary faces if only we take the time to look. And so the town of Oakville slept under a blanket of calm, knowing that somewhere out there, Captain Mira Lawson still walked among them, unseen, unheard, but always near, leaving behind traces of light in every place that needed it, and in every heart that remembered the woman who was treated like a waitress until they noticed her silver star.